today I want to go through some search engine optimization stuff with you. Just talk a little bit about natural rankings, about blogs, about meta tags, about all kinds of things that just affect your life on the internet once you decide that you're done with your site and you're out there. So there's some considerations to go through and to talk about just regarding, okay, I put my site live. What do I do now? How do I get people to find me? And that is a $1 million question in a lot of situations, because a lot of times it just depends on your location, on your, what your site's about, what you're trying to get found for. Like if you're making a website that, I don't know, what's something that there's a ton of out there. Maybe if you're making a website that sells t-shirts versus a website that sells something that no one's ever heard of before, like little, I don't know, glitter covered pennies or something. If you search for glitter covered pennies, you'd be much more likely to have someone find your site if it's unique out there than if you just search for t-shirt websites. Not going to be as likely to be found. It's probably similar when it comes to the idea of just people finding you randomly for freelance work. That's probably not what is going to happen. You'll need to market yourself, get yourself out there a little bit. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit, is kind of the steps that you want to take to make your site and yourself as naturally findable as possible through the web and through the search engines. Well, you need to be realistic as well, that it can take some work on your part to kind of start to drive up your position. And it's definitely no magic formula to just go ahead and all of a sudden be ranked first on Google for everything. That's, like I said, that's the $1 million question. So there are a couple of things, low-hanging fruit, that we can take care of that will at least help us. And then there's a couple more things that I can talk to you about adding content to your site that will help with your rankings as well. One thing I want to be very clear about is the game of getting yourself noticed on the internet is a complicated and crowded. There's a lot of people out there trying to get themselves noticed, right? Mainly when you have a site and you're trying to market yourself, there's several different ways to do it. The oldest, most traditional way, which what we're going to talk about a little bit here, is SEO, search engine optimization, which basically just means, hey, I want to get ranked on Google or on Yahoo or on other search engines. That's the oldest, most traditional way, is, hey, someone searches for me and I want them to find my site. Another technique is by using paid advertisement. So big companies, even smaller ones, freelancers, there's always usually a balance between doing your best to get natural rankings and natural marketing just through search engine placement. And then that's usually augmented, if not completely replaced, depending on the business and how saturated the market is. But there's also usually a lot of paid advertisement involved. Paying through Google, paying through Facebook. There's a lot of very, very specific targeting ads that you can pay to play, so to speak. And that's another big way to get things out on the internet, is just spend a little money and put some paid advertising for yourself. And then finally, the third way is really through social media and being able to just, get a following going on various social media accounts, whether you're talking about, used to be more Facebook or Twitter, but now more things like LinkedIn, Instagram, just depending on what you're trying to do, working social into your sites is a really good way also to kind of drive things. So what I want to talk about is search engine optimization as it applies to WordPress first. Now, one thing that's nice about WordPress, as opposed to just building a site from scratch with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code, is that WordPress out of the box is meant to be pretty search engine friendly. Meaning whatever you build, as opposed to having to know a whole bunch of other rules for search engine stuff, it covers a lot for you out of the box. But specifically, there's a couple things we need to do to really kind of open it up. So the very first thing, I'm going to settings and then go down to reading. There it is. Okay, so the very first one, I had you guys all check this, or you all should have, this search engine visibility check mark. This says discourage search engines from indexing this site. That is always something that you want checked while you're working on a site, because until you're done and you're ready for the search engine to see it, you typically don't want to get listed. You don't want it to be there. That's because there's a lot of reasons for that. I won't go into the details, but ultimately when you're done and you're ready to go and you're ready to say, hey, I'm alive out here on the internet, go ahead and uncheck that mark and hit save changes. All right, so that's the first step, that's a baby step. There's certainly not like, we're not going to go to Google now and find your site. That took off some blockers that keep search engine spiders or bots from indexing your site. Probably took off some meta tags and then just add some things back in out of the box. That's all that WordPress really comes with as far as search engine stuff, is just, hey, I want this to be listed or I don't. So that's the first step that all of you should do when you're ready to go live, is go ahead and uncheck that search engine visibility check mark so we are not discouraging search engines. All right, excellent. So the next step, so when you're talking about getting your website out there on the web, Google's really the search engine that we care about. There's a lot of other things that are run off of Google. And it's been a bit of a mystery, if not a kind of archaic secret, like Illuminati club, of how to get your stuff ranked on Google. And the reason is because Google doesn't actually tell us. They don't tell us, hey, this is what we use specifically to rank websites. They have different algorithms and they change all the time. When I was first learning how to make websites in the late 90s, all you had to do is put the words Britney Spears in your meta tags in your site and you would get ranked super high on Google. That worked for like a year. And that's a really good example of how from the very early days, people are constantly trying to game the system. You used to put what were called keywords into these meta tags in your website, which would kind of explain, hey, this is what my website is about. And then the search engine would read it and it would say, oh, okay, this site's about, glitter pennies. So when someone searches for glitter pennies, this is what I should bring up. Well, people abused the crap out of that system by putting things like Britney Spears and other things that were just popular on the internet into their meta tags that had nothing to do with their site. And Google had a major problem on their hands. So they started changing their algorithms and they stopped telling people what they were so that you couldn't game the system as easily. And year after year, things change a little bit here and there. They'll give us a little bit of tidbit that's like, hey, we're actually paying attention to this now. Like, for example, an SSL certificate is a big thing that they look for to make sure that your site is secured. They also pay a lot of attention to site speed and whether or not your site looks good on a mobile phone. Google knows all of these things and they will rank your website accordingly. So what a lot of people have done to try and figure out, marketing companies, whatever, like what the heck am I supposed to do with Google since they won't tell me? There's this particular kind of search term, the 200 Google ranking factors. That's what we're going to look up. We're going to find a couple of different, let's see, I'll open this very first one, the complete list for 2021. That's also what we want, Google 200 ranking factors. What I want though to start off with is the infographic. See if I can find that. I want the infographic. I have it saved somewhere. I don't want to have to go find it. Maybe I'll search for it. This is going to do it. Show me there's the infographic. Okay, to enlarge. It doesn't want to click to enlarge. Can I save this giant image? Yes, I can. All right. I'm going to save this, open it up in something that I can look at it a little bit closer. See how this goes. Okay, this is one giant, long, skinny image, as you can see. I'm going to zoom in on it a bit. And what this is this is probably 4 or 5 years old now, which is why we're going to check out the document next. But someone went along and came up with what they think are Google's 200 ranking factors. All right, now this is not from Google. Again, I want to be very clear that Google hides this. It doesn't tell us specifically what they're doing to rank websites. So we have to kind of guess, but there's people that know certain things they use, and it's just always kind of moving around. So this tells us that Google has confirmed they use approximately 200 ranking signals in their algorithm. However, they never publicly listed them all. While this infographic is by no means official, it aggregates the best information we have about how Google ranks pages and websites. So first of all, that's just a weird, interesting thing to be aware of, that when you're building websites and every one of your clients, including yourself, if you're your own client for your own website, everyone just wants to be ranked on Google. Of course they do. So people will find your site and you'll be successful. But it's pretty interesting just to know that Google does not tell you how to properly do that. They have a whole bunch of little signals in their algorithm that they decide add to it. And ultimately, at some point, you get a score and that just adds to it. So this goes through, and I'm not going to go through this in grave detail, but I just want to go through some of the main sections. So some of the things that matter, first of all, this shows a bunch of domain level factors, all right? So how old is the domain name? Does the keyword appear in the top level domain? So for example, if I'm searching for glitter pennies, is myawesomeglitterpennies.com the domain name? Then I would be more likely to find that website through glitter pennies. Keyword in the first word is domain. The domain registration link, public versus private, who is, exact match domain, all this stuff, right? So there's domain level factors. Then there are page level factors. So again, having to do with these keywords, one of the biggest things that Google came out and told us a few years ago, they finally said, you know what, this whole keyword thing, since all you jerks are putting things like Britney Spears in the meta tags, we're just not doing that anymore. Now it's all based on your content. We have gotten smart enough at Google that we can just read all of the content on your site, and they basically say, there's no way to fake us out anymore. All of our stuff is just based on how much content is relevant to the user that they're looking for. So for example, if you are looking for stuff about the NFL, you're going to find the NFL's official website a lot sooner before you find anything else, no matter how much, just because they're going to have the most kind of official copyrighted content about that. So if you are making just a simple portfolio site, that's why it's so important to add a whole bunch of contextual information to your portfolio pieces. I've said this multiple times that what you should not end up with is just a bunch of images, just a gallery that people are going to look at and be like, that's nice. You should have some textual information explaining your design process, explaining about the project, what kind of challenges did you overcome, just different things like that, because all of that different content, that goes a long way towards eventually, humans and search engines reading your site and giving you some kind of score above your competitors. So when it talks about keywords in here, it's really talking about a keyword is meaning a search term that someone's searching for in Google. And it's whether or not that search term is included in your content in a bunch of different ways, like in the keyword and title tags and in description tags and all, here's a whole bunch of stuff about your content length and keyword density. And the moral of the story is there are entire companies that focus on just strategizing, just trying to appease these algorithms and all of these things. Things to do with the page level, the domain level, whole bunch of stuff, the entire site level. So beyond individual pages, is there a contact us page? What's the site uptime? How often does it go down? How many pages are there? So there's tons and tons and tons of things that Google takes into consideration. Backlinks, user interaction, Google toolbar data, time on the site, even statistics about your users they'll take into consideration. So huge amounts of things. This just keeps going. Off-site things, on-site website factors, all kinds of crap. Now, like I said, this thing is kind of old. So there's usually an article, like I just searched for Google 200 ranking factors, which as long as you kind of know what to look for, here's a complete list for 2021 that's going to go in, and here we go again. Domain factors, page level factors, site level factors. So this is kind of broken up in the exact same way as that infographic, only it's not an infographic. It has information about each one, telling you what each thing does. So at the very top, domain age. In this video, Google Maps Cuts tells us that the difference between a domain that's 6 months old versus 1 year old is really not that big at all. In other words, they do use domain age, but it's not that important. All right, so that's really interesting that there are 200 elements that we could go in and learn all about how they might affect your site and your rankings. And this is giving some context as to what they mean, whether they are important, how much Google uses them. So there's a lot there, all right? So I get the question all the time from clients, how do I get ranked on Google? Okay, well, let's talk realistically about you're probably not going to be number one on Google unless you're a huge company or you want to spend a lot of money or you have something that's completely obscure. That's usually where I start, is set some expectations. And then I'll go through this with them, kind of showing them how much is involved and how, once you finish your website, beginning to market your website is a whole nother part of the game. Some companies will kind of take a lot of the marketing aspects into consideration while they're building your site, all that good stuff. So anyway, just for Google in general, search engine optimization, there's a lot involved, and it's way beyond the scope of anything we're going to try and do in this class. But there's a couple little things we can do to at least just kind of move in that direction. So let me show you what I mean. One is, without a doubt, uncheck that one, discourage search engines from indexing this site. Absolutely need to make sure that's unchecked, right? Or else nothing's going to ever happen for your site. Now, once that's unchecked, let's go ahead and go into the plugins. And we're going to upload a plugin for SEO that will cover some things for us without necessarily having to do everything. So just type in SEO. Let's see what comes up. Okay. So the first two are the two big ones out there, right? We've got Yoast SEO. We've got all-in-one SEO. Both of these, as you can see, we've got 5+ million. We've got 2+ million. Both of these are extremely popular because, like I said, WordPress doesn't come with anything out of the box, really, besides that check mark. So we have to add in a plugin to give it some basics. Now, both of these you could look up and spend hours learning all kinds of ins and outs of how to use an optimized Yoast SEO and all-in-one SEO. We're going to go ahead and let's use all-in-one SEO because it's a little simpler just to set up out of the box and just have it working for you without actually having to go through too many settings. Yeah, go ahead and activate it. And there's a setup wizard. It takes less than 10 minutes too. Okay, let's go through this wizard. What category best describes your site? Okay, homepage title. Put the tags below. All right, so you've got some drop downs. And yeah, you know what? I'm not so sure we're going to worry about this. Let me see. Tags below. So right now what it's looking for is what would be the title for your homepage that you would want a search engine to see. It's letting you choose between certain things that are already in there, but I think you can probably type in there. No, maybe you have to choose site title, separator, tagline. All right, so yeah, you can see that, yeah, it's looking for, yeah, okay, well, let's just not worry about this. There's other places we can put this in. Go ahead and the meta description, we don't care about that. Just save and continue. Let's see what this wizard does to us. I'm sure, organization name, let's see, phone number, contact type, this stuff is all gonna show up. All right, so what all of this is giving you, this is really interesting that it's a wizard now. This is having you upload things that will show up on the site when people search for you, like as the Google ranking, right? So it's going to show you, show them your phone number, your contact, your logo, your social share image. Let's move past this wizard. There's too much information to put in right here. I'm going to show you where you can put this all in manually. Save and continue. So you could obviously spend the time to go in through and put in as much of this stuff as makes sense to you. So yeah, there's a little snippet of what it would look like when someone sees your site on Google. It's fine. Keep scrolling down. Do you have multiple authors? No. And redirected track, yeah, we'll leave the rest default. Just know you don't have multiple authors. And you have a license key. No license key needed because you're using light. Great. Finish setup, go to the dashboard. Okay, great. So like I explained, this all-in-one SEO plugin, just like Yoast SEO plugin, you could probably spend a whole semester learning the ins and outs of it. So what I want to do is just make sure that we have the basics set up. Usually just kind of installing it and going through that wizard will get you for the most part there. But you can see now that you have an entire section called all-in-one SEO here. Click on the dashboard. Okay, all right, actually close this video. Go back up to the top, see if we can close it. All right, so it's showing you've got, all right, so this is just a dashboard. We don't need any of this stuff really. It's showing us all these things we can do to upgrade to Pro. So we don't need to upgrade to Pro. All right, click on General Settings now. So let's look at Webmaster Tools. So I'm gonna go through each of these and just tell you real briefly what they are, but ultimately you don't really need to do much else. This just kind of said, okay, I am here. I am ready for search engines. I think it turned on a few things. We're going to click through and see what it turned on. So you don't need to go through this right now. This Webmaster Tools verification, you can get very deep with logging into Google, logging into Bing, logging into each of these things and kind of telling them about your site. RSS content, what's under there? Yeah, you're not feeding anything out to other sites. We don't care about that. Access control, that's just Pro. We don't care about that. And advanced, okay. Scroll down. Yeah, we're just going to leave all of this stuff. You can close that little green thing up top. It's trying to get you to use the Pro version. We don't need that. So now let's click on search appearance. All right, so this is where that whole title separator thing, this is where you can kind of deal with what your site would look like if someone searches and sees the response in Google. Once you click that discourage from search engines, it's not just going to happen instantly. It'll take a couple of weeks for search engines just to naturally find your site and crawl it before you start looking and things like that. But you can play around with this, that basically they kind of have it worked out to have you fill out the information that search engines want. Most of it's Google, some of it starts to bleed towards different social media sites that you can search through. As you see, all right, global settings, you see how much is under just search appearance. Content types, taxonomies, media, what you're doing there, go ahead and click on content types, is you get to choose which types of content. Content types out of the box are pages and posts. Now, Divi adds projects as a content type. If you're using e-commerce, you all of a sudden have products as a content type. You can choose to have certain content types be listed in the search engine and certain ones not. If, for example, you have a content type that you're just kind of using behind the scenes, you don't want to be listed as its own thing, you can kind of limit that here. And then taxonomies, media, same kind of thing. You'd have specific categories, specific images that don't get added. You can get real deep with it, but we're not worried about this right now. Click on social networks. This is where you can put all your information about your social network stuff. And what this does is this won't add like icons to your site to link to them. What it does is it adds what's called meta information into your site. That if you look at the source code, it's all of a sudden going to add all kinds of things that these sites want to know about your site to be able to kind of link things back and forth. So if you are running some social media sites, very, very, very good idea if they pertain to your website to link them together through this like this, and to have them like through Divi or otherwise manually on your site where you can actually click on them to get to them. But understand that's not what this is for. This is for behind the scenes, for search engines and things like that, to understand that they're all connected. So you can enter those URLs at some point. Now click on sitemap. The next one down. Okay, so an XML sitemap is like a textual version of your website that search engines are going to read. All right, so just by, and it's necessary for you to have one for search engines to read your site properly. So as we scroll down, it is enabled. So you have some options on what to include in your sitemap. Go ahead and go back up. It automatically made one for you. Click on Open Sitemap. Okay, so right now you only have those 4 pages in your sitemap. And that might be all you need or all you want, or all you care about. This is ultimately kind of the way that the search engine is going to read your site. All right, so this is a really good example of what all-in-one SEO does for you. Without installing that, you might not know anything about a sitemap or the fact that you need one for a search engine to read your site properly. And once you install it, great, you've got one now. And if you want, you can get very deep into learning how they work and how to adjust the parameters and things like that. But all that really matters for now to start off, just to make sure you have your bases covered, is, hey, I do have a sitemap. Great. So we have one magically just by installing this. It creates one by default. You can go in later on and kind of tweak the details to make sure it has everything you would expect it to have. So now go back up to that list, only for pro users. We don't care about that. I assume SEO analysis is always also only for pro users. Connect with it to see your site score. Okay, go ahead and click that. Let's see. Is it going to audit the site? Okay, yeah, let's not deal with it right now. You probably have to create a user account and all of that, but yeah, there's all kinds of places to get SEO analysis. It'd be nice to do it inside of here. You can do it through Google itself, but ultimately, usually the scores are pretty bad and they're asking you to do a bunch of things you don't really understand. What's important for us is just to mainly understand that, you know, it is hard to get naturally ranked through Google. They have these crazy algorithms with all these things they don't tell us how, and there are tools inside of WordPress. WordPress itself is pretty search engine friendly as you fill out content. But for search engines specifically, using either Yoast SEO or all-in-one SEO like this, it's extremely useful. Just like we added our security plugin, our WordFence security, you know, without learning anything else about it, just installing this plugin and adding a few things as it prompts us to will go a long way versus just not having anything at all. From the level of just installing a plugin and configuring it, there's a whole other world of marketing that you could get into to get very, very detailed about this specific thing. So what else can we do as a small independent developer, as a freelancer, anyone that's not a giant company and a giant corporation? How else can you get noticed, right? Because we don't want to necessarily pay for placement. we know that it's going to be a lot of work and or just impossible to get naturally ranked super high for something we might want, like Grand Rapids web developer or something like that. Like if we search for that, probably some other companies out there that spend a lot of money and know a lot more about marketing to get themselves ranked on that first page, right? So a couple of different things you can do as an individual. Number one is you can be specific and try and find like a niche, for example. So instead of just trying to be like the end all be all of, hey, I'm a designer. Okay, what do you design? You know, be more specific, try and find something that you can market specifically about yourself that maybe may be more unique rather than just trying to market specific, you know, something so broad. Try and specialize in something. Another way that you can go about it that all of you should do if you want to start to get yourself out there is create a blog. That is the best way that you can increase your chances of getting natural rankings on Google just from a small independent site or freelancer or whatever, is to have a blog and to have attached social media accounts that are all active. Now, the blog is the biggest part because what Google loves more than anything else is content that changes, content that's updated, and content that is relevant to other users. And Google ranking absolutely loves blogs and blog posts as long as they're done well. Because typically a blog post is something that's about a specific subject that people can interact with. And if you think about your site now, if you had a blog, it goes a long way, because if you launch, you know, maybe you do one blog post every 2 weeks, but it's something that, or maybe even one a month. You know, a lot of big companies, like example, you go to the Elegant Themes blog that I've brought up about 12 times because it's awesome for WordPress. They put new, you know, curated, awesome, useful content on there every single day. That can really, really, really help when you're trying to market yourself, not only to Google, but to independent companies and people individually. Is if you send someone to your site, the fact that it's not just a static site that you built however many, you know, months ago, that it's something that you're actually active with, that you have active blog posts. You know, what Google loves about blog posts is it's just content. It's content that it just wants to eat up and put out there. And the great thing about blog posts is you can share them. You can share that link specifically to the blog post, and you can share that to, you know, social media accounts and just get that to kind of get out there and get around. And then you're ultimately sending people to your site. No, normally when you're marketing for a website, you're marketing what are called landing pages or a specific blog post, meaning you're typically not getting people to get right to the homepage of your site. You're typically getting them to go to a specific landing page about a specific thing. So for example, Steelcase, if you've heard of them, is a really big furniture company in Grand Rapids. They've been around a lot. They have a lot going on around here. And I guarantee that all of their marketing efforts, they're not driving any traffic to steelcase.com, just the homepage, for no reason at all. They're driving all of their targeted traffic to very specific landing pages that have to do with specific pieces of furniture or specific marketing campaigns or things like that, that, you know, as you put out there, people will come to your site as they find these things. And then you also want to be able to kind of, you know, track who's been there. So I'm talking about Google Analytics. So traditional, natural search engine rankings, the best thing you can do, get a plugin, fill it out, and just work on your content, you know, without worrying too much about the plugin. But the idea of always just having new, fresh content on your website, the search engine knows that, and it will reward you for that.